Welcome back. International Relations Minister Naledi Pandor is hosting a mid-term bilateral review meeting with Zimbabwe's Frederick Shava. Dr. Gideon Chitanga is a research associate with the African Center for the Study of the United States at Wits University. Joining us now to talk about this meeting, Doctor, welcome to Daytime Update. So, Frederick Shava, in those remarks made earlier, in the briefing that he gave with Minister Pandor, said this, that Zimbabwe is ready to receive its nationals at the end, or when the Zimbabwe exemption permits expire at the end of this year, which has caused quite a lot of issues and even ended up in court. Is Zimbabwe really ready to receive the people?
Well, I think Zimbabwean citizens have a choice, and they exercised their choice to come to South Africa at the time when Zimbabwe was in deep crisis. I don't think that a lot of the problems that caused Zimbabweans to leave the country have been solved. Zimbabwe is still trying to find its feet in stabilizing its economy and stabilizing its politics. So these people who came to South Africa for work and maybe for other reasons, they are faced with a very difficult choice to go back to Zimbabwe or to continue to stay in South Africa. But the question is, how can they do that if their papers are not regularized and if the South African government is not willing to extend the Zimbabwe exemption permit? I think the focus should be more on the government of Zimbabwe and the government of South Africa finding a middle way in addressing this problem. I don't foresee that if Zimbabweans were to exercise their choice, they would just trace their path back home without conditions improving in a very fundamental way.
And it's one thing for the minister to say that Zimbabwe is ready to receive back any nationals who will be affected when those ZEPs expire in December. But has Harare taken full accountability for why so many people have had to flee a political and economic crisis back home?
Yeah, so I think the question is probably beyond just accountability. I think the issue is, has Zimbabwe implemented such policies which would allow the country to progress in a way that would allow its citizens to be comfortable to reside and use their skills to sustain their livelihoods, to prosper as business people in Zimbabwe. And the idea that we are having this discussion shows that whatever policy reforms that have been introduced have not been successful. And in terms of domestic politics and economic reforms, I think the country still has a long way to go to stabilize the country so that it starts to attract investment, it revives its industrialization, it resets its agriculture, which historically has been the main cornerstone of the economy, and it starts to attract more imports and to export internationally. In a very precise way, we know the problems in Zimbabwe to be political. So there is need for more efforts to be directed towards fostering domestic dialogue that can at least create that stable political base that will allow economic and social reforms and hopefully the stabilization of the economy in the medium to the long term.
And is South Africa still as crucial in attempts to find solutions to the political and economic crises in Zimbabwe as it was 15, 20 years ago?
Yes, absolutely. I would say that the responsibility is on government as it is on the opposition, the domestic opposition in Zimbabwe, to seriously seek dialogue as the only path to solving the Zimbabwe crisis. But obviously there are international factors to the Zimbabwe crisis, and we have had discussions about sanctions and how they have speeded the destruction of the Zimbabwean economy. There's always an egg and chick debate about the responsibility and how and whether sanctions should be removed. My take would be that such a comprehensive dialogue would be the basis upon which Zimbabwe can get more capital, whether the capital comes from China or the West. But I think there's need for a shift to more dialogue and cooperative politics within the country beyond adversarial, polarized politics which has characterized the country in the past 20 years.
But how do you then begin to locate those discussions when you consider that Zimbabwe next year will go to a general election and there's already such a long list of questions about the credibility, whether there'll be enough freedom, whether the Mnangagwa government will rig the vote? Mnangagwa is saying there's in fact what he's seen to be signs of foreign interference in the country's politics in the run-up already.
Yes, you see, if I were to split issues, I think the things that the domestic political players in Zimbabwe should do, and for me, dialogue, there is need for both the government and the opposition to sincerely and diligently explore opportunities for dialogue. That is the first step. That dialogue can then open a path for reforms. Zimbabwe will go to elections next year. The elections are fairly close, but we cannot yet talk of a missed opportunity. The opposition still has a chance to explore everything in its capacity to be very clear about the need and the demand for dialogue. The government has offered other opportunities for dialogue previously, and the opposition rejected those platforms, arguing that they are inadequate. But I would still say half an opportunity is better than nothing, and Zimbabwe needs to utilize every space of dialogue. Domestic dialogue and dialogue that is facilitated by regional partners has demonstrated that it has the capacity to solve problems in Zimbabwe. In 2008, former President Mbeki assisted, and the country ended up with a government of national unity.
Right.
I think that the domestic parties have moved away from the extreme violence of the previous years, so they have better room to reach out and engage with each other more than in any other period. The political environment in Zimbabwe now is comparatively better to what it was a decade and a half ago. So the commitment of the political actors, their political will is key in transforming the conditions in Zimbabwe and avoiding a disputed election.
Minister Shava today, still in that briefing with Minister Pandor, spoke about how Zimbabweans who are in South Africa need to obey the law. And we placed that comment, of course, in the context of what we are seeing now, protests in South African townships on the Witwatersrand, people saying people who are in the country illegally are participating in illegal mining and crimes including rape. Minister Bekicele, in a briefing subsequent to the gang rape of 8 women, confirmed that some of the people who'd been rounded up on suspicion of being in the country illegally and committing other crimes were Basotho. There were also some who were Zimbabweans. What should the government of Zimbabwe do about that?
So I think there are common, there are mutual platforms between South Africa and Zimbabwe to address crime. But I have a problem with generalizing crime as a way of weaponizing it in dealing with the problem of immigration. So for sure, there are patterns which indicate that there are elements, criminal elements who are citizens of other countries who live in South Africa. But I don't think that is the deepest part or the end of the problem. I think that there is need for other solutions and other explanations which we are not dealing with, and maybe we cannot explore in this discussion, that the government of South Africa should be looking at in addressing crime. With respect to immigration, there is a whole population, majority of people who are legally living in this country, in South Africa, and are professionals and are working and are contributing to the economy. Then there is this way in which the criminal elements are overshadowing the normal, progressive, positive, beneficial relations. So I am saying this point because the media and some policymakers and political leaders are fueling inadvertently xenophobic perceptions and obviously fueling what is happening in certain sections of society. To
be fair, though, Dr. Chitanga, the people who have been speaking to the media in communities such as Krugersdorp say it's their lived experience. So these aren't necessarily things. Yes, it may be wrong to blame people who are in the country illegally as a whole for crime in the country, but the people are saying that it's their lived experience that they've seen people from neighboring countries who are committing crimes in their communities. So both can be true at the same time, no?
They are correct in saying that, so in describing a particular experience in that way, right? And it's different with a public official generalizing and creating an impression that in South Africa is a host of a huge number of illegal immigrants. And when a public official sends a statement that illegal immigrants are responsible for crime, well, maybe by being illegal, they've already committed a crime. But I think that it's a perception that fuels the problem instead of solving it. I think institutions of law and order in South Africa, the police, the Home Affairs, and other related institutions, they should be able to address these problems at community level and engage with fellow countries and fellow institutions of law and order to address criminal issues. I don't think that even if these experiences were several, they justify what we see as an amplified xenophobic perception that is growing in the country, and its risk is disrupting, I think, important diplomatic relations with other countries. It destroys relations between Africans, which I think is very important, and it victimizes some groups of people who would be innocent and already vulnerable.
Thank you very much, Dr. Gideon Chitanga. Pleasure to speak to you.